Hello there, everybody. Welcome back. I'm here to be talking about Stranger Things Season 5. Now, this is the final season of the beloved show from Netflix, which takes place about, I'd say, 18 months after the events of the previous season, and it follows the gang reeling from, Vecna almost destroying the town, and, what happened with Max and Eddie, obviously, but it's them, not only picking up the pieces, but them trying to find him by doing these little things called crawls where they try to venture into the Upside Down, trying to find him and stop him once and for all. But insane stuff happens that catches them off guard, which sets in motion the final events of the season. Now, obviously, a lot of people, there's been a lot of uproar and a lot of talking about this final season, particularly in the fact that it took so long to produce 8 episodes. And that was the main thing we've noticed after the first 3 seasons, because season 1, 2016, season 2, 2017, season 3, 2019, season 4, 2022, season 5, 2025. It's like, what? And a lot of people have noticed the earlier seasons were better in, terms of story and quality and all that. Although, season 4 had its moments and I thought it was really great. And this season also has its moments that I think is overall pretty good. But it took longer for a lesser result, is what the general consensus has been. Because the reviews all around, you've had some really big highs and some really big lows. And a lot of people are conflicted on it. But with all that said, I'm going to give my thoughts on it. And so just know this will be a spoiler-filled video. So if you haven't seen it yet, which I feel like everyone who's interested has, since it's been, the full thing's been out for about a week now. So, and, the other parts were released in November and December. So we followed the group. Everyone's pretty much back in Hawkins. There's no people in Russia or California like last season. And everyone's back together. They're all teaming up. Obviously, we have people split up into their little groups. But a main thing that I do want to criticize is the cast. Not to say that they're bad, but we got to a point where there's 30 main cast members, and there's even a part, which I'll talk about in a few, where one of the people sits down and tells everyone something, and I'm pretty sure you know what that scene is, and there's 30 of them or something. It's like an Avengers Endgame type of thing. And that's another thing, is the main complaint that I felt like I had is the lack of stakes. Now, there are some tense moments and you do feel like stakes, but you also know that no one's really going to die. And that's a thing. You have to... I know they hate killing characters, I'm assuming, because they never do. Especially long-standing characters. But when you have this many people and you're hyping it up as this is an end-of-the-world event, the Vecna is going to destroy everything, and no one dies by the end... It's kind of incredible to me. And people were like, well, what about Kali? And I'm like, that's exactly the point I'm making. They reintroduced her after not being relevant to the story since season 2, and she's the cannon fodder. Just like how Eddie from last season was just introduced as a, sort of main character. He was the cannon fodder. Or the season before with, fan favorite Alexei. And you will be like, well, Billy was killed. And I'm like, yeah, but he wasn't really a mainstay in season 2. They kind of threw him in there to be like, all right, here's a character that's sort of been there. Let's bring him into the next season. And then he'll be a bad guy and then he'll be killed off and stuff. And I mean, those earlier seasons I felt had some legit stakes. And here, you do feel tension and stuff. They do hype it up, with Steve on the beam or whatever. Or, the scene, with 11 at the end, which I will say I was interested by that choice. Because you have that scene at the end where 11, looks like she sacrifices herself. And you see everyone's reactions. They're all sad and no, and all that. And then by the end, it's they're showing that she survived somehow. But I think it's made for the interpretation on... That's a what if, maybe she got a happy ending, maybe she did survive and she made it off so that no one will find her. And I did remember hearing about they didn't originally film that, but Netflix kind of forced them to for a potential spinoff or something. So Netflix is like, no, we want to keep this going. And so maybe their intention was she died, because if they weren't planning on originally filming it, maybe that was the intention. So I'll give them that. That was obviously a huge main character that they killed off, if that is the case. But again, that was a major complaint. Another major complaint, and I really don't want to mention it because I feel bad, but it's the Will coming out scene. Now, I was fine with it. Obviously, that's his character. That's part of his story for a couple seasons now. I get it. And my complaint is not necessarily that they, made him gay or, any of that stuff like everyone else online is making fun of with the AI videos and all that gross stuff. Even though some of it was admittedly kind of like, oh my goodness. Like, you kind of laugh at how cringy it is and stuff with the writing and all, in terms of the AI. But the scene itself is well done and it's well performed because, Noah Schnapp, who plays Will, is a really great actor. But you have these huge stakes and everything, and yet you're having this scene, and it's like almost 7 minutes. Do we really have time for him to admit that, he's LGBT to everyone before, Vecna potentially destroys their world and kills everyone? It's like, really, it makes no sense, and I felt like they did it to kind of score points for that demographic. But this isn't even the first coming out scene, because the one with Robin and Steve from season 3, I thought that was done much better and more effectively in how it did it. And I thought that was a really great scene. And this scene's not bad, but it just felt overdrawn out and kind of like preachy, I guess, and unnecessary. And I had to mention that because when you look at the reviews, you notice on Rotten Tomatoes why the score is so low for the audiences. It's because of that one scene, and I get it. That's because, homophobes and stuff. But, I mean, that episode in particular, it does kind of draw everything to a halt because there's a bunch of exposition dump, a bunch of setups, and of course that scene, which is like almost 7 minutes. And I saw a lot of people were pointing out how his scene coming out is longer than the final fight of the season. And I thought that was insane. There's no way. That's crazy if that's like accurate. Because what do you mean him coming out is longer than the entire big finale fight? I just think that's wild. But again, everyone else gives it their all. Obviously, like I mentioned, Will. He had some great moments, like where he gets those powers and saves everyone, earlier on in the season with the Demogorgon. I thought that was incredible. I even mentioned it on my honorable mentions for the entertainment moments of last year. There's so many more moments I wanted to mention, but lack of time. Like, for example, how Vecna is finally defeated with Joyce hacking away at him with the axe, and it shows everyone's, trauma of what Vecna did to them over this show. Again, a remarkable scene, and I'm really glad they gave that to Joyce, since she was like really the main face of the show going in before, it blew up in popularity. I thought that was great. I thought, some of the side characters, like the new ones, Derek, dipshit Derek or delightful Derek, I thought he was fine. Same with Holly, who they recasted and retconned. And that's another thing. They did not plan a lot of this show in advance because they retconned her age and aged her up to give her more into the story. I thought both of them, their performances, I thought they were both pretty good. And, a lot of great memes, like the, where the one girl walks into the bathroom and they're trying to get the kids to escape. And then Mike is like, Mr. What's it? And then they look over and see the one kid and it's the dun-dun, and then he drops down the hole. I thought all that was hilarious. There's moments like that in the show that is really fun, really entertaining. The set design and production, making it obviously look like the 80s and stuff. I'm always a sucker for that because I love the 80s. I thought that was all great. Every character I felt like has at least one moment to shine. Particularly, I thought the stuff, Dustin's arc throughout about him reeling and just so upset about what happened with Eddie. He's dressing like him. He's pushing a lot of his friends away. He's getting so angry and he's not his usual lovable self. And that culminates into a big, fight with Steve. And I thought that whole sequence was great, even though Steve did hit a low blow with what he said. And then, them making up and, Dustin admitting that he doesn't want to lose Steve as well. I thought that was fantastic as well. And, there's moments in the show like that really hook you in and you're like, I love this season. And then, there's other stuff that is just not really great. And the main thing, though, is how a show usually is remembered is its finale. And overall, I really do feel like the finale was pretty satisfying. Even though it was kind of rushed, I guess, how they defeated Vecna. Even though the military stuff, with Linda Hamilton, that was kind of wasted and she doesn't really do nothing. And the finale, which I clocked it as being similar to like Return of the King, where it's like 10 different endings, which makes sense because there's so many characters you gotta wrap up because they don't kill anyone in this show. But it's still crazy how we were at like 40 minutes, I believe, and everything was done. Like the main fights and all were done. So I was like, no way, this is all just epilogue. And it was all just epilogue. And I thought that was maddening. And I mean, not all of it was bad. I just couldn't believe we sat through 40 minutes of just that. I do also want to give a shout out to Jamie Campbell Power as Vecna because I thought his performance throughout, especially when he looked like, in his human form, when he was, with the kids in the abyss or whatever they call it. I thought like just the range of emotions and what we learned, more about him, especially how he was, hurt and betrayed when he was like a kid in that cave, which they show he's scared of throughout. I thought that was just fantastic. But anyways, overall, I thought the show had a lot going for it. It had some, great effects, great performances, from the cast. Particularly my standouts, obviously Joe Keery as Steve, Gatton as Dustin, Finn Wolfhard as Mike has some great moments. Millie Bobby Brown as Eleven had some great moments. Noah Schnapp as Will. Winona Ryder had that great moment at the end with Joyce. Like, the cast all around was really doing great and, knocking it out of the park. But overall, the season is just kind of, it's pretty good, but it's not as great as the other seasons. It's probably the weakest of the 5, which is unfortunate, but the overall finale, I feel like, is satisfying to me. So I was fine with it. But again, those were all my ramble thoughts on Stranger Things Season 5. Again, what do you all think? Please let me know down below in the comments section. Do you have some thoughts you'd like to share as well? Let me know. And if you want to hit the bell as well and subscribe to when I upload, that means so much to me. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.